In this moment, I would like to invite each and every one of you to just feel the love inside yourself. If you feel so inclined, go ahead and take a nice, deep, cleansing breath in, breathing in all the love and light that surrounds you. And as you release the breath, allow your body to just relax in this moment. Go ahead and take another nice, deep, cleansing breath in. And as you release this breath, release all stress and tension, all worries and doubts. Just let everything go for now. Allow your body to relax and allow your mind to be here now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin this inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself to the miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your hand, and let my words act as your own. For your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge. Acknowledging this higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of this infinite presence, I simply speak these words: I surrender. Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all of my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive. Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only positive, constructive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose. I now center upon that one special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. Visualizing that idea as already acted upon and brought to pass. In seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words. I accept. Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me, I allow myself to relax in the peace and fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release. Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This can be a friend, a family member, a teacher or mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present in the room with me this morning. I turn toward that image in my mind's eye and say, I'm grateful for the good in your life. Now I open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to anyone physically present in the room or virtually on this broadcast, and share in confidence and gratitude in saying, I'm grateful for the good in your lives.
Well, for the last really long time, we've been doing a series on Ralph Waldo Emerson, 9 weeks, which ends today. 30 minutes from now, you'll be done with Emerson. I hope not forever. I hope you've benefited from this, and that you'll read him. I sound teacher like when I say this kind of stuff, but don't take my word for him. Don't take anybody's word for anybody else. And I don't mean that in a suspicious kind of way, but read them yourself. When somebody tells you, well, if you go to Wiki Quotes, which is pretty good and pretty thorough, I like it because it cites the source. But I have all his books. I prefer to go through them. But I look through Wikisource because, for one reason only, at the very end of Wikisource, it has misattributed Emerson quotes. It's got panels of these things. And these have been turned into memes. And there's all kinds of stuff they say he said that he never said. That's good to know because you lose credibility if you're just like announcing this stuff and you haven't looked into it. So, read Emerson. I really suggest you do that at some point in time. And what we're doing today is we're kind of catching up on things because we went through the first series of the best known essays of his in our circle in New Thought called Self-Reliance and the Oversoul and Circles and Spiritual Laws. And then there's kind of a wild card in there called Compensation, which we got to last week. And also in the last month, in August, we've gone through Worship, Fate, Love, The Scholar, The American Scholar, and a handful of others. And today we're sweeping everything that's left into a pile of like autumn leaves, and we're jumping into that. So he gives us some pieces of advice here. The chief thing to take away from Emerson is his love of nature and his idea that nature is everything. You are nature. I am nature. Nature as could have been Ashley Montague said this, and that's why I say could be, because I want you to look it up. If you like what I say, look it up and see who said it first, because I'm pulling this out of the air. But she said nature is not something you visit, it's something you are. A lot of times in the Western world, we think of it as something, we go hike in it, or we go fish in it. But no, nature, we are of nature. We are, Emerson talked about the atomic structure of things, the particles of things, which were not that well known in his time except by inference through mathematics, really. He said every particle is God. Every particle is spirit. Every particle in you is interchanging itself with every particle in everybody else. We are one. And the name for this whole system of oneness is divinity. It's all divine, which is not to say it's all flawless, which is not to say it's all comfortable, but it is all divine. Every person is a divine incarnation. If we have problems with people, now this is me bringing it, not Emerson, but if we have problems with people, it's not because they're not divine, it's because either we are not or they are not acknowledging that inner divinity. In the sense that many of us have when we come to a teaching like this is, oh, where has this been this whole time? The fact, not just this teaching or these people or this place, but the fact that I could acknowledge my inner divinity and have an easier life of it, and be a nicer person, and have more friends. Why have I not done this so far? Because nobody suggested it to you. In fact, our attention was steered away from it. I was brought up more or less believing, and you probably were too, that God hung in the sky someplace, watching all of this and judging it. When you died, you got rewarded or punished, and so on. And there was this whole complex theology, but none of it was about what was happening here, now, in the moment. So, at some point, somebody tugged, or something, our true nature, if we believe that that is the case, then it tugged on our sleeve and it said, come home to the idea that all there is spirit, and you are this divine expression having this life at this time. So this is where Emerson goes in his thinking. He came to this. Where did he get this? Nobody really knows. He read a lot of people. He fell in with Emanuel Swedenborg at one point, but he was already grown by then, and he already had his own ideas, and Swedenborg kind of harmonized with him. But where exactly he got this, I don't know. I like the idea he got it observing nature. Like I told you several weeks ago, there are 4 kinds of religion in the world: natural, revealed, derivative, and syncretic. And the natural religion is simply that you look around at the world and you infer certain laws to it. You see principles enacting themselves, and you build a story about that. It might be a seasonal story. If you, whatever part of the world you live in, it has a different rhythm to it based on the geography. I think we were talking about this last time you guys were here, about how the people who live by the mountain have a deity that's up, and the people who live by the river have a deity that goes by, you know. And so that's how natural religion becomes encoded, and a story gets told, right, and it develops over time. And then everybody forgets they made it up. And that's always the story of religion. Everybody forgets well, we've always done this, that it was handed down to us from long ago. No, somebody made it up at some point, right? And other people thought, yeah, that's kind of cool. And all it takes is a few generations, especially in the old days when they didn't write a lot of this stuff down. You know, it was committed to memory, and so after a few generations, it's just venerable lore, ancient wisdom, when in fact somebody had an inspiration. The fact that somebody made it up is not a cheap and tawdry thing. It means that somebody was listening. Somebody had an inspiration and felt strongly enough about it to say so. So that's natural religion. And then revealed religion, just since I brought them up, revealed religion is what it sounds like. There's a revelation that announces itself as such, and you can think of religions that began that way. Somebody one day has a blinding flash of insight, and something comes forward, a new scripture gets written, you know. Derivative means something's already going on, and somebody decides to adapt it to a new need. We know examples of this in religion. And then syncretic, which is my personal favorite, if I had to pick one, is all of these things thrown in a hat. It's where you have spiritual traditions galore, and you get to pick from them, and you get to say what's going on now. And the only downside to that is if, like, you take it away from the people who initiated it and pretend that it's your own, and there's a term for that. And also, I think if you only celebrate the feast days and not the fast days, I've been guilty of that. It's like, oh, cool, the Buddhists are having a party. Let's crash the party. They have good food, you know. Okay, so these are the four types, but Emerson harkens back to the natural self, looking at the world. He says a good symbol is the best argument. I think of this here. I think of all of these symbols on the walls. The earth, the sky. This is the sky. Did you know this is the sky? There are actual constellations on here. Lisa's turning the camera now so you can see it. It looks like it's just a blue banner, but if you get up on it, you'll see they're actual real constellations. And that's the celestial and the terrestrial spheres of ancient time. Oh, now she's got to turn it over this way. And now we're going to show your car in the parking lot. Every natural fact, he says, is a symbol of some spiritual fact. Sit with that a minute. Every natural fact is a symbol of some spiritual fact. You know who else said that in so many words? Plato. That there's a divine template, right? And so the material is the outer edge of the spiritual. The material is the crust on the spiritual. So we wear bodies, and we knock around this earth, and we have all kinds of material things, and every one of them is an idea. And every idea is spiritual. There are no ideas that are not spiritual. Even when there are ideas that are incorrect or even possibly dumb, they're still spiritual ideas, okay? If you have an idea and you say, well, that'll never work, well, it's still a spiritual idea. It just needs some new recombining. Every idea is a spiritual impulse, and every idea seeks form. And Ernest Holmes, who we're going to get into more in the months to come, who's the actual founder of this teaching called Centers for Spiritual Living, you know, he brings up the idea that it's kind of like what spirit wants, what God wants, is to manifest in form for the purpose of its own delight in creation. Right? So if you have an idea for a cake, it needs to be at some point baked. Spirit wants to manifest itself in some way so that it can seem to inhabit form and complete the circle. Whereas if you just walk around, of course MacArthur Park is going through my mind, but as you just walk around with the recipe, which you'll never have again, you walk around with the recipe in your mind, and the cake is never baked. It's an incompletion there. Something's left hanging some way. That's just an opinion. That's not like doctrine. But a lot of times it makes sense. We have unfinished business, don't we? We have big ideas, we have plans and things, and we let these things drop. And we say, well, one day I'm going to get to it. And he brings this up, too, in so many words. Emerson says, don't put it off. Whatever it is you're doing, don't put it off. Because you don't know how long you have. And it'll haunt you. If you have this idea for this thing, do it. Bring it about. And if it's a success, great. And if it's not a success, great. You've learned something, but at least you've fulfilled the process. Standing on bare ground, he says, my head bathed by the blithe air and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing. I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or particle of God. Isn't that beautiful? A transparent eyeball. Reminds me of, who is it, Isherwood, I Am a Camera? No, John Van Druten, I Am a Camera. self-referential stuff. It ultimately became the musical Cabaret, but it was the Berlin Diaries, Berlin Stories. I am transparent. I am the means by which the one life perceives the one life. And I move my egotism out of the way. I move my location, my being fastened to an opinion, to an outcome, to a process. I move that out of the way to us to just be. See, what we do a lot of times, because we're taught this, is we look at everything as need fulfillment, including other people, right? Somebody presents himself in your life, you look at him and you go, what can you do for me? Okay? It's like the old cartoons where everything turns into a roast turkey. You know, it's like, whoa, it's a roast. Look, I'm talking to Porky Pig, and there he is with an apple in his mouth, you know. It's like, right, everything is useful. Alan Watts talks about this. He says, if it were up to us, I bring this up all the time. Some of you have heard it many times, but he says, if it were up to us, all the clouds in the sky would be neat little symmetrical cubes that would march across the sky, each of them dispensing rain at the appropriate time, right? And just enough shade and so on. And he said, that's not how life is. Life is messy and sloppy and spontaneous and so on, you know. So when we move the ego's needs out of the way, like what can you do for me or what's in this for me, you become that transparent eyeball that just perceives things without judgment. You know another name for that? Unconditional love. Unconditional love is perceiving things without judgment. Can you do that all the time? Of course not. But we can all do it more than we have been. We can all do it more than we have been. Because most of the time our needs are either being met or we don't really have any. Like right now, while you're sitting there, those of you at home, do you need anything? Would you like a cup of coffee? There's some at the back of the room. You know, no, you're fine for a few minutes right now. You don't really need anything. But haven't you kind of been stirred up by the culture to think that you do? That there's a product or service that if you had it right now in your life, you'd be better off. And people would like you and want to be your friend, you know? It's like there's always something to be bought or always something, a task. Tasks are good. There's always something. No, be the transparent eyeball for a time. Just sit there and just notice. Just notice. There's another term for this process, too. It's called meditation. When you sit in meditation, you don't want anything out of it. It's not the same as a prayer request or something. You're communing with Spirit for the simple purpose of doing just that. Okay. The progress of the intellect, says Emerson, is to the clearer vision of causes which neglects surface differences. To the poet, to the philosopher, to the saint, all things are friendly and sacred, all events profitable, all days holy, all persons divine. I love that. Isn't that great? To the poet, the philosopher, and the saint. Who are they? You, me. All right? We're not talking ancient history here. The special class of people who knew these things. No, we're talking about every one of us. The clear vision of causes neglects surface differences. The clear vision of causes is you are a godling. You are the experience that the divine is having by means of you. If there are surface differences that I perceive, that's on me. That's my choice. We look each other up and down and get all kind of squinty-eyed about, you know, who you are and what you know and how you come to know it and where you rank in the hierarchy of smart people or wise people, whatever, you know. And all of that judgment gets moved aside when we recognize the ubiquitous divinity of each one of us. The only reward of virtue is virtue. Now that's a drag, because wouldn't you like to think that the reward of virtue is money? You know, wealth, fame, notoriety. Oh, and power. Power would be great. Maybe if I'm virtuous for a while, I'll gain power at the end. And we talked about this last week, his idea that growing up in church, listening to the authorities speaking about in this life, this is a sin, and this is a sin, and that's a sin, and here's a whole long list of things that are sins. And you don't do them now because when you die and go to heaven, you can do them forever. And he's like, this probably, I'm thinking he was saying to himself, this probably isn't what I was supposed to take away from that, but that's what I did. It's like it's all deferred gratification, but either virtue is or it isn't. You know? Either virtue, either I stand in my integrity or I don't stand in my integrity. If I do stand in my virtue, my reward is virtue. All right, what is the reward of virtue? Less fear. Less anxiety. I saw this meme. I thought it was funny. I'm going to find it again, particularly the graphics that went, the graphics really supported the meme, and I want to dig it out again for toward the end of the year. It was stale, you know, been around a while, and it said this. It said that it was referencing the Christmas season, and it said, well, it's almost time to put away my everyday, ordinary anxieties and take out my special holiday anxieties. And I thought, that is going to be useful. That is going to be useful around year's end, you know, because you call the thing like it is. Yes, it's an anxiety. It's not really a performance benchmark, you know, to put this on for each other. It's really more about the anxiety that we carry. Well, how do you offload anxiety? One way to do it, he would call virtue. And virtue, while it's a very large subject and it's one of the ancient graces and so on, virtue is really putting one foot in front of the other and doing the next right thing, and trying to clean stuff up as you go along. You have less fear, you have less anxiety, your life works better. Though we travel the world over to find the beautiful, we must carry it with us or we find it not. And he brought this up because he said, I'm sometimes accused of being anti-travel, which was silly because he traveled quite a bit, which in the early to mid-19th century wasn't that easy, you know. But he said, no, I'm not against travel. I'm not against visiting other countries and learning other cultures at all. He says, it's just I see so many people wanting to do this to get away from themselves. In 12-step parlance, some of you may be familiar with, that's called the geographic cure. Maybe I won't have a drinking problem if I move to Montana, you know, except, oh, wait, it's not a dry state, and even if it were, I'd find a way around that. So if you go looking for something you don't feel you deserve to possess, you won't find it. Whereas if you stay put, recognizing that right where you are right now is all the beauty and all the wisdom and all the everything else you could possibly want, then you carry that with you. And the benefit, we're going to talk about this in a moment when we flip the script on cause-effect, but the benefit to the people in the other country that you're going to go visit is you show up whole, as opposed to needing something. I was reading about these tourists who've been carving their initials into the Colosseum. You know, it's like, it makes it, what? Why? What are you thinking? Well, they needed something. And I mean, I can get all judgmental about it, and everybody else does too, but I look at it, and it's, well, they needed something they didn't feel they had. They needed some credibility or visibility or whatever, you know. But wouldn't it be great to go someplace and the people say, hey, we've been waiting for someone like you who kind of has it all together. Welcome to our land. You can stand in the light with us, you know, instead of kind of sucking off the energy that you find there. And this isn't just about tourism, but people have said, well, I'm going to go to India. Now, India is a wonderful place, and I mean no disrespect whatsoever to India, but people go to India. You know why they're going to India? Because they're not in India. They're going to India because they're in America or Canada or someplace. I'm going to go to India because that's where the ancient wisdom is found. You know what India would say? Well, the ancient wisdom is found where you are, too. It's found everywhere. The smart Indians would say that. It's everywhere. If you go there to enrich it with who you are, as well as to learn and grow, but not to vacuum it up, because it's everywhere. Okay, you get the idea. So I wish that life should not be cheap but sacred. I wish the days to be as centuries, loaded, fragrant. That I just give you because I like it. That's just a wonderful thought. I wish the days to be as centuries, instead of like, when will this day ever end? Have you had days like that? Okay. Last week, what was it, Thursday? It was 109 degrees, 109. Okay? Most of us are very grateful and very fortunate to have air-conditioned Wattses, but you've got to move from, I did about 50 yards outside from one place to another, and I thought I had a piano on my back. I mean, it was, okay. So, we say, if only autumn, let's get this season swept aside, this summer, and let's bring on autumn. And in fact, let's finish out this year. It's been kind of a weird year. Let's finish out the year and let's move in fact, this whole decade, in fact, right, and pretty soon, it's like you're pulling all the rug out from under you, of everything. You just stay put in the moment. Let this day extend to a century. You never know what you'll find. Love is omnipresent in nature as motive and reward. Love is our highest word and the synonym of God. Love is the dawn in us of music, poetry, and art. Love is who we are. Omnipresent in nature as motive and reward. In other words, love determines what we do, and it determines what comes of what we do. We need not fear that we can lose anything by the progress of the soul. The soul may be trusted in the end. This is, again, where he runs up against conventional religion, which tells you the last thing you can trust is your soul. He says the soul may be trusted in the end. We not fear we lose anything by progress of the soul. The more you learn, the more you grow. It's like you circle back. You regain your childlike viewpoint. I think this is what Jesus meant when he said you must become as a little child to enter the kingdom of heaven. I don't, we're pretty clear he didn't mean a literal little child, because first of all, how would that happen? And why would that happen? But instead, the childlike viewpoint, growing back into the innocence, trust, and wonder. He said, ancient writers said each one's soul. Now, where he says each one's soul, he often says man, and I changed that because it jars me too. So I make it either plural or neutral gender, pronoun. Ancient writers said each one's soul embodied here on earth went roaming up and down in quest of that other world of its own, out of which it came into this, but was soon stupefied by the light of the natural sun and unable to see any other objects than those of this world, which are but shadows of the real things. That's Gnosticism right there. That's a Gnostic viewpoint. The idea that we incarnated into this world, and in his telling of it, we're stupefied by this sun. It's bright here. I can't see. And so I mistake things as shadows of their reality. I mistake the shadows for the real, because I come from the world of the real. There's a school of thought in esoteric wisdom in the West, at least, that we're not from here. We're not from here. Much attention is paid on where we go when we leave here. Less attention is paid to where we came from when we got here. We come from a spiritual realm, and we incarnate into this form in some way, and it's like really engaging and hypnotic, and we kind of lose our way in it. Which is why we seek out spiritual disciplines, why we seek out religions and all, is to have some sort of a lifeline through it all. Of what is real, what counts, what is eternal, what lasts, what will follow, and so on. Just consider that idea. And it'll put a whole different look on your day. I'm not from here. I'm here, glad to be here. Glad to do what's in front of me to do, but this is not the whole story of who I am, of my divine estate. Treat people greatly and they will show themselves to be great. That's good practical advice there. Trust people and they'll be trustworthy. We say, yeah, but I have to wait, see? I have to check out first, if how they are, and then base my reactions on that. It's one way of doing business, but another way is the spiritual dimension, which says, take the first step, like proactive grace, like proactive forgiveness. Proactive forgiveness is, I forgive you before you come crawling to me begging for it. Proactive gratitude says, I'm grateful for things before my order has arrived. And it supposes a quality of power, an intensity of personal power that you have, whereby your gratitude, things open up. Kind of like an example I often use is kind of like when you write a business letter and you say at the end, thank you in advance for your consideration. You're putting a little pressure on there. You're assuming they're going to give you some consideration, and you're thanking them in advance for it, And it has usually the intended effect. Somebody says, I better pay attention to this letter. Better reply to it, Spiritual law operates that way. You expect it to do something, and it frees it up to do it. I'm going to close with this last point here because I don't want to say it's complicated. I'm going to close with the last point in a poem. I'm going to read you a poem, a short poem by Waldo. Now I had read a lot of this material at some point because I've been studying this stuff for a really long time. So I had read, most of this was like dimly familiar and some of it was new. And then there was this piece, I don't know where it had been. But I saved the best for last. Every person takes care that their neighbors shall not cheat them. But a day comes when we begin to care that we do not cheat our neighbor. Then all goes well. We have changed our market cart into a chariot of the sun. Sit with that one a moment. We've changed our market cart, in other words, our ordinary reality, into a chariot of the sun, into this kind of spiritual dimension. Everybody cares, and everybody's taught to care that we not be cheated. There are people out there who'll cheat you, and they'll take advantage of you, and they'll run roughshod over you and all this. But a day comes when it occurs to us that we should be just as crisp in not cheating our neighbor. And that, my friends, right there is spiritual maturity. That is the spiritual process, the spiritual program coming full circle. It's life not about, as the late beloved Dr. Noel McInnes used to say, it's life not anymore just about what's in it for me. It's life about what's in it from me. What's in it from me. I am that powerful. Oh, man. I could go on for days on this point. We have gotten the mistaken idea that the purpose of power is to have it over people. No, the purpose of power is to share it with other people. The purpose of power is to distribute it as widely as you possibly can, because the more you give it away, the more it multiplies. The more it multiplies within the self. To bless and to love and to sanctify. And if you can't do all that because it sounds a little lofty and vague and all that, the least you can do is not cheat your neighbor. Not cheat your neighbor. Let the person go in front of you because you know they got to the stop sign first. Let the person go in, give people a break. Now, some will say, well, does this mean I'm a doormat and people walk all over me? No, not at all. Because you're operating not from victimization, you're operating from power. You're operating from here. Let me help you make your life easier. And anybody who would take advantage of that is going to go somewhere else. And the people who are going to be with you are going to be, this is how he says, to have a friend, be a friend. People say, I'd love to have a lot of friends, like a bus is going to pull up and your friends are going to get off. Hi, we're your friends. No, that's not how it works, okay? How it works is you become friendly to the world, and people are like, say, I feel like striking a conversation up with this person. So just think about that. Treat people greatly, as we said, and they will show themselves to be great. Adhere to your own act and congratulate yourself if you have done something extravagant and broken the monotony of a decorous age. And that's a great little line right there. Congratulate yourself if you've done something extravagant. Okay, here's the poem that I promised you. He wrote a lot of poetry, most of it under the titles of Woodnotes 1 and 2, and then there's some random stuff too. But this little bitty thing, I just love this. For nature beats in perfect tune and rounds with rhyme her every rune. Whether she work in land or sea or hide underground her alchemy, thou canst not wave thy staff in air or dip thy paddle in the lake, but it carves the bow of beauty there, and the ripples in rhymes the oar forsake. Now that's old-fashioned poetry, so maybe I need to explain it a little. Nature can't be hidden, her alchemy underground, whether she work in land or sea. You cannot wave your staff in air or dip your paddle in the lake. You can't do anything at all, but it carves the bow of beauty. It carves the reminiscent experience of nature. It creates more nature in a way, okay? It creates an avenue for nature to express itself. And the ripples of the lake that you've dipped your oar in rhymes the oar forsake, and that's put oddly worded. And so now, in lieu of physical ripples in a lake caused by an oar, you have rhymes. And he's referencing his own poetry here. You have a rhyme that's great. You have a song, in other words. Okay? You have a story to tell. Everything blossoms out into art. Everything blossoms out into music and beauty and wonder and so on when you recognize, again, the fullness of nature. So my hope and wish and will and longing for you as you go forward in the week to come, where it'll still be hot and it'll still be what it is, but we're moving into a different light. We're moving into an eventual different experience of nature. Is appreciate nature around you. Appreciate your own nature. Everything that this means to you. And you can do it indoors. You can do it in air conditioning and so on. You know, appreciate the nature that you are, the mind that created you, that is still right where you are as you are, and is bringing to you constantly the product of your own desire and acceptance. So let's know together now, there is one life, one power, one presence, pure spirit, everywhere manifesting, everywhere radiant and beautiful and wonderful. And where that presence is, that radiance and beauty and wonder, it scoops up and it surrounds and it loves on pain, suffering, loss, lack. Any experience, individual or collective, that we might have or have ever had, that can use triage and support. This one life knows what to do. It is sunlight, and it is roses, and it is rainbows, and it is also Band-Aids. And it's also surgeries, and it's also the surrounding of loss with quiet comfort. For we're allowed to feel as we feel. In fact, it's good for us. In fact, it's our nature. And the key to our access to spiritual power is to know how we feel and why we feel that way, and seek out our own motives and intentions and ambitions and so on. So this one life is working through you, me, each of us. It's working through all beings everywhere, constantly, to restore and to uplift, and it's never finished with this. It's never finished with this. It's always another chapter. We participate with it consciously. Every time we think and every time we feel, every time we care, we are consciously participating in the healing of all creation. For this knowing and its manifestation in form everywhere we turn, I am so deeply grateful. I release this word now into the infinite, calling it done, and so it is.
Here for the first time. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being here again. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your energy and your presence. Thank you for everything you give to this center, including your monetary donations. It is because of what you give to us that we can be here and providing this wonderful content to you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I invite you now to say with me, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is.
All right. Now, I'm a little bit behind because I do not have children, but I do drive in traffic, and I've noticed that school is back in session. So there's a whole lot of treatment that we can do around school being back. And I'm going to remind you from several standpoints. One, the children are back in school, so let's pray for those teachers. Okay, and the parents who now have homework coming home with these kids, and the kids because, you know, they need it. But I'm also going to remind you, it doesn't have to just be school, because there's that whole energy around learning. And so it's a good reminder to those of us who are adults who may not be in school anymore. You know what? We can still pick up something new. We're never too old to learn something new. And there it goes. It's confirmation. We're never too old to learn something new. That's all it is. It's just confirmation. So, yeah, we want to know this teaching in our bones. That's Ruth. All right. So this is where I'm going to go for the treatment today, for all of the stuff around school. And so when, you know, if you know a teacher, Judith, you were a teacher, right? Uh-huh. We can still pray for you even though you're retired, because I'm sure back to school still brings up flashbacks. So, all right. So I'm going to invite you into the consciously sacred. It is all sacred all the time. What we are doing is we are consciously entering into that space, into the knowing that there is one life, one power, one presence, one love. And each and every one of us are that crust, that manifestation, that spirit-made form. So that presence flows through us, that love flows through us, that power flows through us, and we live that life with a capital L. And so I'm knowing in this area of back to school that the teachers are safe, well provided, well supplied. That the students are safe, well provided, and well supplied. That the administrators and all the other people that aren't students and teachers, the janitors, the lunch people, you know, all of the people that make the school run that we don't think about, that they are safe, well provided, and well supplied. And that we all come to the table, all of us come to the table eager to learn, to spread our wings, to bring in new information and create new experiences with that new knowledge. And that school is a place of joy and harmony and peace and amazement and wonder and fun. And for those of us who are beyond school, that we are open to learning something new. that we realize that life is a journey. We are constantly learning something new. And yes, occasionally we do get homework. And it's okay. Because it's all good in the end. And I know this with all of the gratitude in my being. And I am grateful for a teaching that teaches me about peace and love and harmony. And I'm grateful for a community where we come together to remind each other of those teachings. And I am grateful for this place. I am grateful for our musicians. I am grateful for our... There are two words that start with M, musicians and ministers. And I'm grateful for our practitioners. And I'm just grateful, because grateful is another word for love. And if you want to change a grumpy mood, try practicing gratitude. Start counting your blessings. It'll work. So I release my word now into love and law, and know that it is so, and so it is.
Say with me now, something wonderful is happening through me.
Something wonderful is happening through me.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in everything I am.
I feel it in everything I am.
I choose it.
I choose it.
I trust it.
I trust
I use it.
I use
And I
it.
love it.
And I love
So
it.
it is.
And so it